In this video, I'm going to be comparing Freud's psychosexual theory and Erikson's psychosocial theory. They have a lot of similarities between them, but they do have a few differences that are key into why these are two varying theories. I'm going to start off with Freud's theory with an explanation. He has 5 stages, and his 5th stage carries on from adolescence to adulthood. The first stage is the oral stage, where the child is focused on suckling and feeding. The second stage is the anal stage, where the child is learning to be potty trained and gaining a sense of independence. The third stage is the phallic stage, where the child is kind of discovering their own anatomy and understanding themselves more and kind of taking on the gender roles that they have. The fourth stage is the latency stage, which is just like a pause in, not a pause in development, but in the sexual development that Freud is talking about, where they're just making connections with classmates and peers. And the 5th stage is the genital stage, which starts in adolescence and carries on through adulthood, which is where teenagers begin to set goals for themselves and to form healthy sexual relationships with others. Moving on to Erikson's stages, he actually has 8 stages because he breaks adulthood into 3 subparts. So Erikson's stage starts with trust versus mistrust, which is where the child is getting their basic needs met. If they're not getting their basic needs met, then they will have mistrust and issues with that development of trust. The second stage is autonomy versus shame and doubt, which is where the child becomes self-sufficient and gets their sense of independence, or they start to doubt their own abilities. The third stage is initiative versus guilt, where the child becomes more responsible, or they feel that they are limited by their own capabilities. The fourth stage is industry versus inferiority. This is where the child starts to build new skills and learns how to do other things. The next stage is identity versus role confusion. That's when adolescents start to look for their sense of self. It runs into like the young adult age, where you start developing roles and expectations for yourself. After that is the intimacy versus isolation, where the young adult is either getting into healthy relationships or avoiding disappointment. Then comes the generativity versus stagnation stage, which is where middle-aged adults continue to work through their lives. And lastly is the integrity versus despair stage, which is where older adults try to make sense of their lives. Between these two theories, they both had a focus on unconscious development, and they both agreed that development occurred in stages throughout a person's life, from 1 to 3 years old, birth to 1 year old, 1 to 3 years old, 3 to 6 years old, 6 to 11 years old, adolescence, and then into adulthood, with Erikson breaking adulthood into 3 subparts. And both agree that relationships were influential on the development. The main difference between them was that Freud focused on biological factors, while Erikson focused on social factors.